Welcome back to another episode of Dialogue. I'm really excited about today's episode because we get an opportunity to sit down and talk to a wonderful woman, Chanel Dionne. I love her story because it's a story that is quite unique, and I think all of you are going to be really touched and blessed. Chanel, thank you so much for being on the show today. It really, seriously, like we've been trying to do this for so long, and finally I get you on the Dialogue show.
Exactly.
So how's it going? How does life feel right now?
Life is going good. Like, I have no complaints. I mean, I have, of course, everyone has their struggles, but in spite of that, like, I'm just still pressing forward.
That's so awesome.
And just seeing the works of God in my life daily.
And we're seeing the works of God in your life daily, but also now you've just released a book.
Yes.
And this is a very touching book, and it's going to touch the lives of so many people. It already is. That's the exciting thing. So here's a book that you've written about your life in your past, and I don't want to give too much away. I just want you to share it. But This book is called Lost Girl Saved by Grace. Why that title?
For me, I chose the title Lost Girl Saved by Grace because when I look back over my journey in my life, and when God told me, He wanted me to write a book, I was struggling with a title. And then all I kept thinking about is when I was on that journey, I felt like I was lost. And even today, like, there's moments when I still sometimes feel like I'm lost. But God always reminds me, you've been saved by grace and you're not lost. And you never was lost. But I know that for me and me writing and having the title, I wanted to reach other women and girls out there who may feel like they are lost.
Yes.
And it's just to let them know you may feel like you're lost right now, but just as you can be saved by grace.
Yes. All right. So you take us through a journey in this book, and many people don't know, but you are a victim or were a victim of sex. I am
a survivor
of sex trafficking. And so this book kind of takes us through that journey. And I mean, I remember I was on a plane reading your story, and I was just in tears as I was on that plane. So you walk us through the beginning of how that even started.
Well, I was 21 at the time, a single mom of two. And I just came on financial hard times. And after having my second son, me and my son's father, we just really weren't getting along really good. And financially, I was having a hard time. And then being 21, I kind of went through like this postpartum depression after having my son. But I didn't deal with it the healthy way as far as getting real help. I started hanging around the wrong type of friends. My priorities started getting out of order. And then I started asking myself, is this all that life is? I'm a single mom of two, always worked on my own, never depended on the government for anything, never depended on a man, more or less. But I'm asking myself, who am I? Yeah. Why am I here? There has to be more. And I really felt like I had disappointed my children because I never expected for my life to be where it was at that time. Yeah. And it got to a place where it was feed your children or pay your bills. And so one of my friends at my job, she was a model part-time, and she would make money on her shoots. And so I kind of started getting information from her, and I'm like, well, that may be something that I would be interested in because you weren't just making a couple of $100s. You were making more than that based on what she told me. And so I asked her if she could, hook me up with the people that she was working with. And it just so happened that the people that she introduced me to, they were already in the sex industry. And apparently, and what I would find out later on in my journey is that a lot of times they persuade women and girls by using modeling as a way to lure girls in. And so for me, that was something that I went into blindsided thinking that my life is going to be changed. He has a future for me. It's going to help me become a model. When in reality, and money was like, what you make in 2 weeks, you can make that in a night.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And the guy that she introduces me to, he's a successful businessman. On top of him, what I would later find out would be a pimp. But he presented himself in such a great way, and his caliber, like I never dated anybody on that level, so I thought. But this man would in fact instead be a pimp, and he would use my past against me because by that time I was into ecstasy pills, out with my friends, clubbing, drinking all the time. And that night when I met him, I was high off ecstasy and drinking and stuff. And what I liked about him is because he didn't try to have sex with me. All he wanted to do that night was talk. And I come
So
from a place.
he literally, this is someone, and this is how you're explaining the process of how you got lured into the sex industry. So he didn't try to put a hand on you.
No.
He didn't try to lay a finger on you.
No.
He didn't try to have intercourse with
None
you.
of that.
All he did was simply talk to you. He gave you attention.
Yes.
And I guess, reading the book, your father was not in your life.
No, he was not.
So your father, I think about little girls or women who just want this attention. Sometimes it's not even just the sexual intercourse or, the affection. You just want someone to simply sit down and talk to you. And he gave you.
He gave me what I had been looking for all of my life. And he almost let me know that I mattered again. Because at that place in my life, I felt like I didn't matter anymore. And so talking to him, he was like, oh, no, you have purpose. There's something out there for you to do. And I got the plan. And I can help you get to that. And I had talked to him about my kids. He knew the importance that I had, the love that I had for my children. But he had a plan all along. And his agenda was to sexually exploit me. And that night we talked and I shared my past with him. I was a single mom of two different baby daddies. I had my first son at 18. And by that time I had been a little promiscuous. And so he listened that night and I'm just talking to him, not thinking that he has this whole other agenda set aside for me. So when the time came from there's no photo shoots to you're going to go to the strip club, it was like, well, you've already done all of this. Why not do this?
Yeah.
And you already don't have your job now. Just trust me. Just trust me. And I won't leave you like your dad or like their dads did.
But at what point did you realize that what I'm doing is not right? I may be getting the money that I want, and I'm getting all of the great benefits that I was not getting before.
Yes.
At what point did you realize that something's going on here?
I always kind of felt like I always knew that something was not right with it. But the difference was because I had him there, he was there to interject on the mindset that I had. And so he gave me a new belief system. And so I say my book is called Lost Girls Saved by Grace. It's because before that, my foundation was not laid on God or in his beliefs. I grew up going to church. I guess I could say that I was a Christian, but I didn't live the Christian life. So if I try to throw up to him, well, I'm a Christian, he's like, oh, really? Well, you've had these 2 kids outside of marriage and you were still having sex with other men. Are you sure you're a Christian? And so when I never read the Bible myself on my own private time, and so I don't have anything to come back at him with. And so I'm like, well, maybe he's right. And so when there was times when I was unsure, I'm like, I'm wrong. This is wrong. I can't do this. He would always have a comeback. And it was something that I couldn't fight against other than it just being wrong. He's like, well, you've done plenty of things wrong before.
Yes. So environment was a big thing. You're saying that because of the things that he would say, him basically saying you're not really a Christian. Right. Eventually, after hearing this for so long, and you don't have anyone that's standing with you and fighting with you, all of this now starts to feed into your mind. Yes. And you begin to have a completely different belief system now. Yes. Wow. So tell me how you were even able to, as your thought process changed, as your belief system changed, what did you get to that point where it just, you're like, okay, this is it. This is my life.
It would probably, so I got away from him. I stayed with him for about a month and I got away. And I think the biggest thing was when I got away from him, I'm on that ride back home and it's really sinking in. Like I'm starting to see like, this is wrong and I've been played, but I've left my job. By this point, I don't have a place to stay. My kids are with my family. Everybody sees me as the Chanel who has it all together. But he has had me in the strip club working back home where everybody knows me now. Everybody knows me as a stripper.
And how long is this period of you being known as a stripper, you working as a stripper?
This was like 2 or 3 months.
2 or 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And so everybody now knows this is who I am now. And so I didn't have a comeback. I was full of so much shame and guilt because I'd never imagined that would be my life. I had friends in the past who slept with guys for money. And I talked bad about them and encouraged them, leave that situation. You can do better than that. So here I was getting played by a man who's promising me a better life, and I fell for it because it came wrapped in another package. And so for me to just walk away from that, it was hard for me to do that because I didn't have anything else to fall back on. And it was hard for me to just face the fact that I had been played. Me? I don't get played. And so it was just, how do you come back from that? And the only way that I knew to come back from that was just to play on it and just to, okay, well, this is who I am. Maybe he's right. And I thought about all the hurts from all the men in my past, all the things that I had done. And I said, well, maybe this is it. And by that time, I'm listening to music that glorifies it. I have friends that embraces the culture, because it's a soap culture. They see on TV and in music and even the movies that come out, sometimes sex trafficking can be portrayed in a light that really isn't true. But for a lot of girls and women who get involved in it, they see the glamour first. And so I saw the glamour part first, and then I saw what happened behind the scenes. But it's, how do you come back from that? And there wasn't an organization. There wasn't someone there like, okay, I want to help you get out of this. Everyone had negative things to say. And so I was the hoe now. And so that became my new normal.
Now, do you ever feel, and have you ever received feedback from people, or maybe even criticism? Because you never know. Everyone takes, it could be feedback, it could be criticism, of people saying that, well, your story to me doesn't seem like sex trafficking. Have you gotten that?
I have not, but that has been a fear of mine because of what everyone is used to seeing sex trafficking is. So sex trafficking is based on fraud, force, or coercion. And in my case, it was fraud. Because he did not say to me, Chanel, I'm going to make you a stripper, you're going to become a prostitute, and you're going to work for me. That was not what he told me. And so I was lured in by a false promise. All sex trafficking will not always start with physical force. A lot of it is mental. And so for me, it still has been validated as a sex trafficking experience, just not what a lot of people are used to. And that's been a fear of mine. But I have other survivor sisters who have similar stories as mine. So I know I'm not alone. I know I'm not the only one. It's just that our stories aren't the most popular today. But that's why it takes me and others like me to stand up and say, this has happened to me too.
So how did you get the support to finally start getting the courage to share what you've gone through? Because I'm sure it had to be very hard to share all of your experiences in a book.
Well, honestly, the support came from God. I spent a lot of time with God by myself, and I did a lot of journaling. And so for me, it first started with hearing from him and him saying, I see what you've been through, and I was still there for you, and I'm still here for you. And before that, I haven't always identified myself as a sex trafficking victim. And a lot of times with women and girls who have been trafficked, it takes them a while for them to see that they've been trafficked because of the mind manipulation and the false choices. And when they make it seem like you woke up one day and you said, hey, I want to be a prostitute. Hey, I want to sell my body. When for a lot of us, that's not the case. And so initially, I just told my story that I was a girl. I met a man. He turned out, and this man said he wanted to help me financially, and he turned out to be a pimp. That was my story. I didn't need sex trafficking to label my experience. God had already labeled my experience for me, is that I was a lost girl that has simply been saved by his grace.
Yes. Wonderful. So is there anything, if there's anything that you could say right now to the thousands of people who are watching, what would you tell that broken woman or that lost woman who's watching you share your story so boldly and courageously?
I would definitely just tell her that wherever you are in life, just know that God loves you and that God has a plan for you, and that he has not forgotten you. And whenever you are ready, because I know walking in those shoes that a lot of times we really just aren't ready for the change. And that's okay too. But just know that whenever you're ready, that God is there, and that he already has people in line and in place just waiting on you to say, you know what, enough is enough, and I'm ready for my life to change.
And that's exactly what happened with you.
Yes.
And you have so many people who have championed you, supported you. I mean, just coming to the launching of your book, seeing the support from your mother, who had to play the role as a mother and a father growing up with you. I mean, that's a big deal. And you go into so many descriptive details about that in your book. And I have to just tell everyone, please go and get a copy. I'll be putting a link in the description box. It's Lost Girls Saved by Grace. So Chanel, what else do you think has played such a huge role in your life to make you really influence women? Because right now you're already doing such a great job, but what is the future going to look like for Chanel? Because this isn't all of your story. There's still so much more.
Exactly. For me, I'm real big on identity. And it doesn't just start with women who've been in the sex industry. I meet women in church who don't know themselves. And I'm real big on, if you were to lose everything, do you still know who you are? And a lot of times women and girls, they don't know. Without that degree, do you know? Without that job, do you know? Without the relationship, without church, without your parents, do you know who you are? Wow. Because that was my test. Chanel, do you know who you are? And Chanel didn't know who she was. I lost everything. And that's how it was so easy for me to fall prey to my pimp, because Chanel didn't have a foundation in who she was. For me, I've always had nice things. I've always had a nice car, always had a good job. I went to college, did all those things. But when all of that was wiped from up under me, I didn't know who I was. And so my message for girls and women is, do you know who you are? And for me, I did not have that foundation until I built a personal relationship with God. And that was just me sitting down with him and reading his word. Because even in the industry, I had pimps who had read the Bible. The first pimp I had, he had read the Bible. He said, oh, you want Bible? Well, my colors are purple and gold. That stands for royalty. That's in the Bible. I said, oh, okay. Because I had never read the Bible, he could play that on me. I had another pimp even told me, well, I was made to be a prostitute. You were made to be a hoe. And prostitutes are even in the Bible. So it's validated.
And that's how you were.
And that's how I just kept falling. Like, maybe he's right. Maybe they're right. Because I can't break free from this.
And I think the sad thing is as people hear this, it's very real.
Oh, very real.
It's very real. And you'll never know until you meet a few people that it's happened to and they begin to share their stories. And that's when the reality hits you of, that could be my daughter. I don't have children, but what if there was a mom that hears you and knows that I better make sure I teach my daughter the word of God. I better make sure that my daughter has a very solid foundation, that she is deeply rooted in Christ, and teach her these things. So that way men or anybody can come into her life and just pull her astray or have her so far lost and so far gone. So thank you so much for sharing that. I do have one more thing that I'd like to do before we go. Oh my God. I just love the fact that you share, because I'm almost in tears right now. Just thinking that it had to be really difficult to come out and share something like this.
Oh, it was difficult. It was not an easy process. I tossed and I turned and I prayed and I fasted. And I'm like, God, are you sure? Are you sure? Because I've seen many women share their stories or share their testimony, and it's so pretty. My story isn't pretty. And God told me just recently, he said, you know what? Rahab wasn't the only prostitute in the Bible. But I chose her story to use. And the same with you. I'm choosing your story, and you trust that and you walk in that. And that's just what I've been doing.
I was reading the book of Hebrews. I really wish I had the chapter off top of my head, but Paul was speaking about untold stories in the Bible. He mentioned so many different names, and he was like, and there's so much more of wonderful things that they did, but their stories are not even told in the Bible. So there's so much that we don't know. But the idea is to make sure that when God has given you so many gifts, when he's given you authority here on this earth to share, because people are encouraged, people are set free, so many things. And just God sharing that with you, that, hey, there's this, there's that, and we got to know those stories. It's important for us to know those stories. It's important for people to know your story. It's important for others, you out there, to share your story. So I just thank you again for having the courage to come out and do that. So, okay, let me get to my magic box. I call this my magic box. Okay. And I do this with everyone who comes on the show. Okay, so have you ever heard of this game called Table Topics?
I have not.
You have not? So what you're going to do is you're going to read that out loud, and we just get to know a little bit more about Chanel.
Okay, it says, would you rather be a great musician, artist, or athlete?
Let's see. I have a feeling I know what you're going to answer because I read your book.
Right.
So I think I already know, but the rest of the world don't know. So go ahead and tell us.
I would choose an artist.
Yes, I knew it.
Is that what you were thinking?
I was thinking that. So Chanel, if she were not a speaker and an author or a teacher, Chanel would also be a singer,
yes,
because she used to love to sing back in the day.
Sing.
Yes. All right. So, okay, tell us before we go. All right, who is your favorite artist?
Oh, that's hard today. Today, I would definitely have to say Tasha Cobbs is my favorite artist. Like, this one song, like, I listen to it over and over and over. It's called Grace.
Lost Girl Saved by Grace.
I love it. I love it. Just that reminder, because even in your walk with Christ, you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to get it right. And you have to be reminded on a daily basis that it's by his grace that you have been saved, and not by your works and not by perfection, but by your faith in him. And so hearing that song just always reminds me, like, I got to get back up.
Yes.
I got to get back up.
Got to get back up.
Got to.
Got to get back up. Well, thank you again, Chanel, for being on the show. It was such a pleasure having you. And I'm so happy. Wait, also, girl, I just be, whoo. Well, you know this is real dialogue.
Right.
But how can we find out more about you and the resources that you offer? Please tell us. Let us know.
Okay. You can go on my website. It's called www.chaneldionne.com. And also follow me on any social media platform, Chanel Dionne 1.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Dialogue. This episode is so dear to me because I know there are so many women out there who are lost, but I do strongly believe that you can be saved by grace, and you will be. Until next time.